busy. Hello, welcome to another Wine with Tweedy video. It's a Saturday today, but despite my normal routine of having fizz on a Friday, it seemed to be something I was in the mood for today. And also, despite the chilly weather, it is 11 degrees or something like that outside, according to my phone. My cellar was looking very bare when it came to English sparkling today, so I went to one of my local wine shops that has a really quite small and quite static, never changing selection of English sparkling. I had the usual kind of sparring that I always seem to have in wine shops with the people who work there, that I mean, generally speaking, I would rather not be asked when I enter a shop if I need any help at all. I usually just try and deflect that question. If I have questions, I'm perfectly capable of initiating that conversation, but I would rather not be pressed as soon as I go through the door. Perhaps that just shows my very poor communication skills, or the fact I'm a very antisocial kind of person. But I was slightly taken off guard with a different from usual question. It was something like, "What are you interested in today?" or something. So regrettably, I then did engage them in conversation. And part of the reason I don't want people in shops to do that is that typically within the first 3 sentences, I can see a sort of groan appearing on their faces. And I suspect, especially in wine shops, the "can I help you" means, "can I tell you what to buy?" And somebody like me, who is incredibly opinionated and fussy about wine, usually it isn't a great experience for the people working in the shop. They ask, "What do you normally have when it comes to English sparkling wine?" And I could list a very long list of excellent English sparkling wines that they don't stock. So I think they got their back up a little bit, but as a sort of a peace offering, I did deign to buy something they had in stock. This is Castle Brook. I've had this a couple of times before, largely just because, as I say, this my local wine shop stocks it, and there isn't really much choice in my neighbourhood. I've probably complained about this before. London is bizarrely disinterested in English sparkling. I really don't understand why the capital of England would not want to promote a product of its own country, but there we go. So this is from Herefordshire. It's is it the Chin family, double N, Chin estate, and they're probably more famous as asparagus growers. Don't know if this has a vintage on it. Oh yes, it does, just sort of stamped on the back in small letters. 2016, for what difference it makes. It's their regular Brut. It's made from classic champagne grapes, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. I assume from the fact they're listed in that order, this is Chardonnay dominant. And I remember from previous times having this, that it is quite sort of a Chardonnay type profile, kind of green apples and lemons. But it'll be interesting to revisit it today, see how it shows. I did bring an ice bucket with me, but it seems completely redundant. I didn't even fill it with ice in the end. This was already chilled in the shop, and as I say, the ambient temperature today outside is something like 11 degrees, which I think is uncannily close to perfect traditional method sparkling wine serving temperature, if I recall correctly. As always, the delight of being out in the proxy countryside that is the Heath, slightly lessened by the inability to do sabrage in a public place, or the not really inability, but the sort of politeness of not wanting to do that, the courtesy to my fellow humans not wanting to. So I'm opening it the boring way. There we go. Straight away, a bit of an autolytic whiff, even before I stick my nose in the glass there. And in with the green apple. I'm almost fancy being from Herefordshire. This has slight cidery notes, but I think that would be unfair. I think it is. I mean, it's a fairly textbook Chardonnay-based English sparkling. And green apple, I'm getting a little bit of autolytic note, something very slightly in a kind of bready, not quite sort of, not as rich as brioche. Something slightly bready there. Yeah, green apple, not so much lemony. Still really quite green on the palate, zingy. I mean, it's quite mouth-watering. I will give them that. That acidity is quite refreshing, quite mouth-watering. I suppose it does have quite a lingering finish. Still getting sort of green apple zinginess on the palate some time after finishing that first mouthful. Yeah, it's okay. It's sort of priced at the lower end of the ESW spectrum. I think this was £30, bang on. I may even be able to find it cheaper than that elsewhere. And yeah, if you are looking for a standard expression of predominantly Chardonnay from English Sparkling, crunchy green apples, zingy fizz, then I suppose this does the job. I read some other tasting notes just to check I wasn't going completely off script, off base, whatever the phrase is. A lot of other reviewers seem to identify the fruit character, maybe referring to different vintages, as more lemony rather than appley. Probably ought to acknowledge that there could be some lemoniness there. I'm warming to this a bit after further thought. I am prepared to concede it might be quite lemony